conversation with two very important literary figures of the country. I'd like to introduce them to you now. Rana Safvi is a historian, author and a translator. She's the author of 4 books, Where Stones Speak, Historical Trails in Mehrauli, The First City of Delhi, The Forgotten Cities of Delhi, and Tales from the Quran and Hadith. She is a translator of Syed Ahmad Khan's Asar Us Sanadi, did I pronounce it right? And Zahir Dehlvi's Dastane-e-Ghadar, and City of My Heart, which contains 4 accounts from 19th and 20th century. She's a columnist with The Hindu and Daily O and writes for all major publications in the country. I'm sure we'll have a lot to learn from her immense experience. We have Keerti Ramachandra. She's a multilingual translator. She translates from Marathi, Kannada and Hindi into English. Her translation of the Sahitya Academy Award-winning novel, A Dirge for the Damned, was shortlisted for the Crossword Award in 2016. Her translations won her the A.K. Ramanujan Award instituted by Katha for translation from 2 or more languages. She co-translated Hindutva or Hind Swaraj by U.R. Ananthamurthy from Kannada, and Joginder Paul's stories from Urdu and Hindi, A Dying Sun and Other Stories. Another translated collection of Gangadhar Gadgil's Marathi stories, A Faceless Evening and Other Stories, was published in 2017. Her translations from Marathi, Kannada and Hindi have appeared in anthologies, magazines and journals in India and abroad. Keerti is also a freelance editor of fiction and non-fiction for leading publishing houses. She is currently teaching a postgraduate course in translation theory and practice at Mount Carmel College in Bangalore. That's where she lives. We met for the first time 2 days ago and we realized there's a family connection as well. So, I think that's symbolic of the translation fraternity of India. I think we're like a small family, which is also quite crazy and chaotic. That's my introduction. That's the introduction of our speakers. The topic of today's discussion is called Translation Matters.
Yourself as well?
Yes. Sure.
I would have read it out, but I thought since you went to
fair enough, yeah. My name is Maitreyi. I'm a translator. I translate from Kannada to English. I've done quite a lot of translations earlier which were published in journals and anthologies, etc. But the most recent work is translation of a Kannada Sahitya Academy Award winning novel, which I translated into English as A Handful of Sesame. I also write poetry, which has been, I don't have a collection as of yet, but I've been published in journals. I was also shortlisted for a prize. So that's me. I live in Goa. That's my introduction. Yeah, the title of today's discussion is Translation Matters, India's Multilingual Puzzle. So I think that's a very wide rubric which you can bring in several topics about translation, including the social and cultural significance of translation in a multilingual society like ours, the politics of language in the subcontinent, the promise and possibilities of permutations of linguistic pairs in translation, the craft of translation. So this, I think, we can dedicate an entire conference to discuss translation. But with the limited time we have, I think if our speakers could talk about their experience as translators and how they began and what they do and what are the challenges they face. And, so with that, I'm sure we can build a discourse on translation which will touch upon all of these topics that I just mentioned and probably more. So I think the 2 essential qualities of translation, 2 essential functions of translations is to take stories and ideas beyond the confines of language and to make up for a lack of such ideas and stories in one's own language where those ideas haven't been generated organically. So with that in mind, I'm hoping that the discussion will sort of harness all the possibilities, we'll discuss how well and how much we are harnessing these possibilities. So over to, which of you would like to speak? Sure, over to Rana.
Good afternoon, and thank you for missing your lunch and coming here. So, as Maitreyi just said, I actually would like to first talk about why I translate. My journey into writing began quite late in life. It began about 6-7 years ago. I used to blog and write earlier. I had done literature in the BA, but it was nothing that, writing was not something which I ever thought I'd do professionally. I started writing about the monuments of Delhi, and when I was writing on that, I wanted to make each monument, like the name of my trilogy is called Where Stones Speak. So I wanted the stones to speak, and then I realized that these, my monuments I do from the beginning till 1857 is my cutoff year is for the trilogy. So I realized that most of the monuments have been written about only in Urdu. And Urdu was I had learned it as a child, but I had somewhere along the line forgotten it, because as you know, in convents we don't have at least in UP we didn't have the same option of Urdu. We did Hindi, Sanskrit and English. And so I went back, I started relearning it, learning the script, reading it, improving my vocabulary, and for my book. And then somewhere along the line I realized that there's a huge audience out there which is missing out on these books because they can't read Urdu. And so the first book I translated was Dastane-e-Qadar, which is an eyewitness account of 1857. Most of the literature we have is written by the British on 1857, the uprising. So I thought it is very important, and this was the 160th or 70th year of independence of 1860. Whatever. It was, so I wanted that to be out there. So I did that. Then I translated a book again on Delhi, which was written in 1846 and had never been translated in English. It was there in French, which described Delhi prior to 1857. Because 1857 the British destroyed most of the monuments. Like Red Fort, if you all have gone there, only 20% of Red Fort remains. 80% was destroyed by the British. And Sir Sayyid describes each in very intimate detail, each place. Those places we have never heard of. Like when the book came out, people said, oh, we didn't know that happened. The third book which I translated is The City of My Heart, which again talks of a very syncretic Delhi, of where the emperor is celebrating Holi on the one hand, Eid on the other hand, then Dasera, then Raksha Bandhan and Nowruz. So a very eclectic kind of atmosphere in the court. So I felt it was very important to translate these, and that's why I wanted to first talk about why I am translating, because people who are translating from Urdu are not doing historical texts, they are doing stories and poetry. And that is contemporary. You already know that many of the poems you already read in Roman, so basic understanding for at least North India it's there. But the historical texts are just not there for the people to read.
Well, my story is completely different, because Rana translates not literary fiction in that sense, whereas I'm a translator of literary fiction. I have done literary non-fiction, but that is a different story. Now, I came to translations like her. I went to a convent school. I was educated entirely in English. My mother tongue is Marathi, my father tongue is Kannada. I've spent a lot of time in the north, and Hindi is my second best language after English. Now, till this moment, honestly, I used to think that I was at a great disadvantage because I didn't know enough of either Marathi or Kannada. Now when Rana said that she went to a convent, she studied Urdu but she'd forgotten it, and then she's translating into English, I'm extremely grateful that I have this solid grounding in English, which enables me to understand the ethos, the culture, the lifestyle, the people, the environment of Kannada and Marathi, by virtue of it being part of my blood, my DNA. But I can express or transfer all this through my translation into a language which I studied at school so completely and so thoroughly that I do feel I have a good command over it. I have the resources to translate from the source languages into English, which is my target language. When I came to translation in 1994, I was working for Katha. I had just joined Katha. Geeta Dharmarajan being the pioneer of translating short stories into English through their collection of stories published every year called the Katha Prize Stories. And she said to me, "Will you translate Jayant Kaikini's Amrita Balli Kashaya from Kannada?" I said, "Yeah, why not? I know Kannada, I know good English, I translated." And then I got the shock of my life. I was reading Kannada. It's one thing to be able to speak Kannada. It's one thing to be able to reasonably write. But it's a completely different thing to translate from Kannada into English. So then what did I do? I read the story a couple of times. There were words which I had never heard before, because he writes in a Kannada which is common to Dakshina Kannada. And I come from North Karnataka. I read the word mandaki, and I said, "What is mandaki? I've never heard this word." Chururi. We call it chururi. So there were problems like this. And who was my constant companion at that time? This huge, big Reverend Kittle's Kannada English dictionary. I was in Delhi. I didn't know too many, in fact I didn't know any people who spoke Kannada or who could read and write. Most of them were like me. But then I did translate the story. I accepted it as a challenge, put my heart into it. Geeta Dharmarajan then edited the story and I was livid. I said, "Geeta, but how can you do this? This is not how it is in the original. This is not what the author says. You don't know the language. I know the rhythm of the language." And she said, "Calm down, relax. This is your first attempt. This is how it should read in English without taking away the nuances, the rhythm, the speech patterns that you're trying to express into English, which the English reader should not find jarring." What's the point in translating something which is awkward, which is clumsy, and which loses the overall impact of the author's intent? Now, Kannada, that Jayant Kaikini, the story that he set in, was set in Mumbai. Urban, middle class, post the communal riots. And so I'm not going to go into the story, I'm just saying, if that was simple, which I thought was simple, my next work was a huge Marathi novel called Zhada Zhadti. The author didn't know anything about me. Somebody told him, "Ask Keerti to translate." He asked me, I said, "Okay." It was about displacement of 56 villages affected by the construction of a huge dam. Completely rural setting, dialect throughout except during the narrative passages. A landscape which I was not familiar with in Konkan, where there were these mountain ranges and a dam built on the river between two mountains. And so it was something that I didn't know anything about, but I was too vain to refuse it or to turn it down. It was such a big boost to my ego, and I thought I must do it. So I had to do a lot of background reading of geography of that region. The Maharashtra Gazette came in very handy. I read that. I had interactions with the author, extensive interactions, and then a fortuitous trip to my aunt's farm near Kolhapur and Akole, where I saw these people working on a farm. You know, the characters who just came alive because they were all the characters in the book. The landscape was very similar. And then I started translating it. It took me almost 2.5 years to translate the 500 pages, but I couldn't progress because every time I'd read a chapter or a passage, there'd be tears streaming down my face, and I would just be useless after that for a while. I have not forgotten that book even today. It was so powerful and so moving. So this is my introduction to translation. This is how I came to doing it. That was the age of innocence when I just went into it thinking, I know Marathi, I know Kannada, I can do it. Today, now I've done so much translation that I'm left with a lot of questions. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? How do I negotiate between the two languages? There are so many issues that come up each time I translate a different story. How do I make Mr. Gangadhar Gadgil, writing in Marathi, and a very urban Bombay Marathi ethos, different from Bolwar Muhammad Kuni, who writes in a very dialect, of a small Bihari community in South Canada, Dakshina Kannada, a Muslim community, and then make them sound different from Joginder Paul, who writes a mixture of Urdu and Hindi. How do I make Gadgil sound different from Sania, who's a modern young Marathi writer, and different from Vijaya Rajadyaksh, who's in her 80s, and that's the latest work I'm almost finishing. How do I do that? Or do they all sound like Keerti Ramachandra in the end? So these are very basic challenges that I face, and I'm asking myself more questions than I've ever thought of before. So I'm wondering whether I should be reading more theory, or whether all these questions should be put down so that I have, as yesterday I was telling Professor Harish Trivedi, who's also here at the seminar, when I used the word strategy of translation a long time ago when I just began, he said, excuse me, military operation. You don't use strategy for translation. You talk about it as negotiation. So how do I negotiate all these? This is what I'm left with, and I tell you, it's not a comfortable place to be in.
I'm glad you have all those questions, and I don't think we will ever find absolute unequivocal answers to all those questions, and it's probably detrimental also. I think it's important that these questions keep coming again and again, and we keep finding answers but not enduring answers, so that the process continues. I mean, that's just an opinion. I did have a question about something that you said just now, but I would like to ask you one very focused question. You know, as you were saying, history is written, history is always about perspective, and it's about the person or the powers that write it, that narrate it. So your book, Dastan-e-Ghadar, is written from the perspective of an eyewitness who saw it. I think language is very crucial, like even the choice of words are very crucial to how history is written. So I would think, you know, from my little, whatever, high school knowledge of history, the words to describe the revolution, the 1857 revolution, there are different perspectives. So from the Indian perspective, it's called the First War of Indian Independence, whereas from the British perspective, it is called a mutiny and a rebellion and, you know, revolt. So since you translated from Urdu, and I don't know what Ghadar means, but the subtitle of your translation says the tale of the mutiny, and I was a little surprised, because if it's an eyewitness's perspective, why would it be called mutiny and why not war or revolution?
So that's a question I face continuously, and I put it in when I'm writing myself, I put it in inverted commas. Now, Zahir the Helvi was living in 1857. He was 22 years old. He was living in the court of Bahadur Shah Zafar. He was a poet, and he was also a courtier. He was in charge of the flag. He was the flag bearer of the processions. Now, when the new soldiers come from Meerut, they have killed their officers there. They are working for East India Company. In 1803, East India Company had taken over Delhi. They had defeated the Marathas. Before that, the Marathas had been in control of Delhi. Now the British are, and Bahadur Shah Zafar, and before him his father and his grandfather, they were all pensioners of the British. So it is technically the rule of the British. And these soldiers are working with East India Company. So when they are killing their officers and they are refusing to use the Enfield rifle, which is laced with the fat of pig and cow, they are technically revolting against their superiors. So it is a rebellion, it is a mutiny, because if a soldier refuses to obey orders, it's a mutiny. And Ghadar is the exact Urdu translation of mutiny. That is why Dastan story, the story of a revolution, so tale of a revolution. Now, when I am writing, this term was used, the mutiny, word mutiny and revolution was used for very long by the British, even by the Indians who called it Ghadar, and they called the soldiers who had revolted, they called them Baghi. Baghi means rebels, so they call them Baghi. But in beginning of the, I think, 20th century, Veer Savarkar wrote a commentary on it, and he called it the first war of Indian independence, because this is the first time that the British, that they are fighting the British, Indians. But actually before that, even Tipu Sultan had been fighting the British. So it's not the first war, but only thing it is, now when we say it's a war of Indian independence, the concept of India comes. In 1857, the concept of India as we know it as a nation today was not there. And also this was restricted to certain states, especially the Gangetic plains such as, and what we call the heartland, that is Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, UP and Delhi. These were the affected areas because it is here that Dalhousie's doctrine of lapse had been put into effect, and most of the people who were fighting because they had been disfranchised or their rule had been removed or whatever. So that is what they were fighting. And these soldiers all belonged, in fact, in Dastan-e-Qadar, the Delhi uses a very derogatory word for them, Purbiya, that is Easterners. And Delhi looked down upon them. Where have these Anpur people come from? Because Delhi was a land of high culture. So they didn't really like them. And Zahir Delhi throughout keeps abusing them. He feels that they have come and disrupted a way of life. They were quite comfortable living under the British rule, following their mushayaras and their soirees and the musical parties and going for hunting, whatever, and going for processions and celebrating. They did not quite see it as a oppressive rule or as imperialism, or so that is why. So when I am writing, I use the word uprising. In my own essays or my own personal writings, I use the word uprising of 1857 because I feel it was too restricted for such a vast country. Now when the British come down to fight the rebels, it's the troops are from Punjab and Afghanistan and the Gurkhas. These are the three people who are fighting the rebel soldiers in India, in Delhi, and in Lucknow. So it cannot possibly be an Indian phenomenon because Indians themselves are fighting. The South did not join them. In fact, the North Indians, the people from Bihar and UP were called Purbiyas. The people from the South who were because these are blanket terms, the people of the South who were in the East India Company Army were called Telanganis. So you will constantly in the local, any literature written in one of the local languages apart from English, you will find the word, even in English sometimes it's mentioned, Purabiya and Telangani. For them, everybody south was Telangani because that was an area of catchment for them for recruitment. The other thing is now when I translate, since I am doing historical translation, I give very, very detailed notes because the Delhi just says, this on this day, so the second war or battle or this such and such thing happened, so it's okay. Now for somebody, he's not a historian, he's a poet. For somebody who's reading it, maybe reading it, whether you're reading it as a literary novel or you're reading it from the point of view of history, you need to know what happened. At least I need to know. I'm very curious. So for me, the process took very long because I had to find the answers to each and every question. And again, I sat with 3 dictionaries, Persian, Arabic and Urdu, because these are the 3 languages that are used here. Now, apart from that, he used slangs. Now, there is one place where he's talking of people who've come from various regions. Now, the platoons and the battalions are revolting against the British and coming to Delhi to fight. So, in one place, Zahir Delhi says, Safar Meena ki palta na gayi. Now, palta means platoon. I couldn't find where Safar Meena, and I was studying, I was living literally in 1857 for almost a year. I knew everything that had happened, all the areas which were involved. I couldn't find. I said, where is this Safar, where is this Meena? I kept hunting, on the net, asking everybody, nobody could answer. Then I turned to Professor Shamsul Rahman Farooqi. He is a very famous writer, very, very famous in Urdu, and his sense of history and literature, he is extremely well read. So I asked him, and he started laughing. He said, that's a colloquial term for sappers and miners. So, not in my wildest dreams would I have thought that Safar Meena is sappers and miners. So these are the challenges I faced, because many of those terms, since I'm writing something written in the 19th century and translating that. So again, as Keerti just mentioned, it's your source language, you have to know the nuances of. You have to know, and that is something I've grown up with. Grown up hearing these tales, grown up in the same kind of atmosphere that I've described in the City of My Heart. So I knew the nuances of everything, and I was very confident of the language. I'm translating it into English because that is the language I'm being educated in. So those were things I was very sure of. But the historical part of it, and again history is my subject, so these are the things I try to bring into it. And when you're translating, it's very, very important not to be just very well versed with the source as well as the language into which you're translating, but to know the nuances of the source language. Because if you don't know that when you are translating, you could change the sense of it. And I am very faithful when I'm translating. I like to say exactly what the author has said is what I translated as. Of course, there are some devices in Urdu which do not work in English, like the idioms. I didn't want to use very modern idioms, so in some places I have tried to write it. So all those liberties are allowed, but I take no liberties with the translation. I do it very faithfully.
Thank you. The question of faith in translation is such a, sometimes it's such a wide term and it's so open to interpretation, especially when you're translating non-fiction and fiction. I think with fiction there is a larger margin for
history, there's very little margin. Because if I take liberties with history, the historical fact may be distorted.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes it even more challenging for the translator, because especially when you're finding idiomatic equivalents, it becomes so restricted, and within that space you have to find your space to kind of say what's being said. And my next question is for you, Keerti, and I want you teach you teach translation theory for postgraduate and practice for postgraduate students. My relationship with theory is, I've studied cultural studies for my masters, and is very theory heavy. I would read theory for the sake of theory, and I think it provides a great, it gives you a lot of tools to deconstruct cultural phenomenon, but I don't think it exactly provides a roadmap for cultural production. So I wonder if you think of translation theory that you teach, does that get in the way of practical translation? For me it would, and when I do translation, I put aside all my knowledge of theory and approach it afresh. So I want to know how you do it.
Well, let me give you an analogy. When you learn driving, you don't necessarily need to know the mechanics of the car, right? And if you know how to change a tire if you have a flat, it helps. But what you need to know when you're driving is the road signs. You need to read the road signs. So when you're translating a text, what you need to know are these pointers. You see, because all reading of literature is essentially a response. I'm not saying it's an interpretation. I'm saying it's a response to a text. And when you have 7 people reading the same short story or poem, you will get 7 responses which are overlap, say up to about 70%. But 30% there is scope for variations. Now, if you allow yourself that 70% margin, I would say I'd much rather know all my road signs well, rather than how the car works. Because that is going to prevent accidents. It's going to help me not go down a one-way street. And that is what I try to capture when I talk about nuances, when I talk about ethos, when I talk about cultural specifics. Now, there are ways of dealing with this, of negotiating some terms which are very, very problematic, or not problematic, some which are very common to translation from any language, are kinship terms, food items, clothing, parts of, body. Okay, you have equivalents for knee and ankle and elbow and all of that. But in Kannada itself, there are 3 words for what I'm wearing here with my sari. It's called a jacket. In some, Masti uses that word. She was wearing the Mangama, the curd setup. He calls it a jacket. In South Canada, they call it rauke. And we call it blouse, polka. Polka in North Karnataka comes from the Marathi. Now what do? You have all these 3 words, but I would translate it as a sari blouse. This, you call it sherbu in Kannada, you call it padar in Marathi, you call it pallu or palla in Hindi. What do you prioritize? What about kheer, payasam, payesh in Bengali, or paisa? The politics of language comes in here. Now, when you have to choose, what do? You don't go by theory. You just go by the word which is most commonly introduced or which is available in the English dictionary. Now, if I say kheer, anybody who doesn't even know Hindi probably will understand it. But then, why am I saying kheer in a Marathi, or a kheer in Marathi is fine. But when I'm using, translating a Kannada story, let me give you a very funny example. I was translating Gangadhar Gadgil's short story, in which this woman says that when I get very angry, I feel like eating something sweet. So I sent the maid to buy for me some dudhi halwa. And the editor, and I had said the dudhi halwa, the sweet dudhi halwa. He translated, or he edited that to say milk sweet. He thought dudhi, doodh was milk. Similarly, he changed. I was fed up of making shira for these frequent guests. And so I had said shira, and the sweet shira and savory something, and sharbat. He had sweet shira. He edited it as sharbat. The shira had been changed to sharbat. And I said, good God, what on earth are you doing? Now mind you, he's an editor with years of experience, many more than I have as a translator. What do? So coming back to the roadmap, so I would say this. Now, when you're translating a novel, it's like reading road signs on the highway. You have a lot more freedom. There is a lot more scope for you to get into the novel, to get into the characters, and there is a lot of narrative which is in standard language. But in a short story, you have to be exceedingly careful, because like driving in a city, these road signs are critical for your safety. And what I would say, therefore, is when you're translating short stories, you adopt a completely different kind of approach rather than when you're translating a novel. Now, coming to your question about teaching theory, I said when I first started translating, it was the age of innocence, when I didn't have any theory, any background. It was just gung-ho because I know 2 languages. Now, when I've started translating and doing a lot of translations, all these issues are bothering me. I've been reading a lot of theory, not necessarily that it feeds into my translation. Because when I teach, I never tell my students what are the qualifications you need to be a translator. I say, what are the qualities you need as a translator? You need sensitivity, you need fluency, command over the language, and you need to be reasonably faithful. Now, may I elaborate on that fidelity concept? Very late in life, I learned that this question of if it is faithful, it can't be beautiful, if it is beautiful, it cannot be faithful. And I remember I was mortified when I heard that, because if the author has created a beautiful work, why can't a translator create an equally beautiful translation? Yeah. Then I realized that, we apply standards of fidelity that come from the West. Our theory is all, not all, it is predominantly West-oriented. And there, when the Bible was translated, they had to be faithful, it was the word of God. And therefore, fidelity mattered. You can't take liberties with the Ten Commandments, you can't take liberties with the story of creation. But when you come down to India, what are we doing? We've got 300 versions of the Ramayana. And in the Ram Leela and Gopinath Bazaar in Delhi, there were things like, and I tell you this because I have been there, Ram says to Ravan, "Abhe Sita de de." So he said, "Nahi dunga." "Abhe de de na." So he said, "Nahi dunga." "Chodo yaar, Sita nahi to bidi to de de." This is how we accept our text. There is absolutely no question of the essence. The fidelity is to the spirit, not to the word.
How much more time do we have? 10
Have
more.
another 7 minutes.
Okay, so we'll have one more question and then we'll open it up with the audience. I mean, this is also something that I'm trying to understand. You are something of an authority on the Urdu language owing to your, well, I would assume so, at least for me you are, because I don't know much. And I've always admired Urdu for its beautiful, poetic kind of feel. I think it's a general misconception that Urdu belongs to a religion, and it's very slowly, I'm not even sure if it's changing, but the perception ought to change. From what little I know, I think it's this act of associating it with religion has been something of a contrived thing, and it's snowballed, and and that's become the norm of what's being understood. Would you care to clear that?
I'm not an authority on Urdu language. I'm still a student, I'm still learning, but yes, I do. I've read a lot and written a lot about the history of the language. Now, Urdu was never the name of a language. The name of the language was Hindi or Hindari. And that was a collection of Brij Bhasa, Awadhi, Gurjari, etc., etc. It was the language in which many people wrote. When poets like Qutb Quli Khan and Wali Dakhni and Ghalib started writing not in Persian, then non-Persian verses were called Rekhta. Rekhta means scattered. You picked it up from all over the country. Now, Delhi was called Sheher Urdu-e Mohalla. Sheher means city, Urdu means exalted camp. And Mohalla means exalted, Urdu meant camp. So the city of the exalted camp, because the army also lived in Shahjahanabad, which is today's Old Delhi. When the British came, they picked up the word Urdu from that. And so the name of the language became Urdu. Urdu was spoken by everybody. Ghalib's best friend was Hargobind Singh Tufta, who is the last Persian poet, who is the last non-Muslim poet to have a Persian diwan. Diwan is the collection of his ghazals. So Urdu never belonged. I am now using the word Urdu, but as I said, it was Hindi. It was not the language of any religion. It was the language used in court after Muhammad Shah Rangila, because people by then had picked up a lot of local languages, and Persian was the formal court language. So I don't know how many of you understand Urdu here, but there is a verse by a poet called Iqbal Ashar who says, "Kyun mujhko banate ho taassub ka nishana? Why are you making me the target of communalism? मैंने तो खुद को कभी मुसलमान नहीं माना." So Urdu was never the language of a Muslim. It's just that post 1857, when the British were trying their divide and rule, they started printing press had just come in. So they started printing textbooks for their Fort William, where they were creating babus, Indian babus, and where this distinction started coming that Urdu is the language of the Muslims and Hindi is the language of the Hindus, and this was in the census also of 1872. And then Bibles were printed. Now, if they printed in Devanagari with a lot of Sanskrit words for the Hindus they printed in the Perso-Arabic script. Urdu is still not a script, it's Perso-Arabic. Perso-Arabic script for the Muslims, a lot of Persian words, and the division started. And today we feel that, okay, at the time of independence, when the committee was, the language committee was there, it had been decided Hindustani would be an official language to be written either in the Perso-Arabic script or the Devanagari. Unfortunately, Pakistan became independent a day before us and they adopted Urdu as their official language. Only 6% of Pakistanis speak Urdu, the rest of them speak either Sindhi or Punjabi. But because they had made it their language, so of course we could not make it.
Should we have questions from the audience? Oh, okay.
I would start from the last discussion about the Urdu because I can tell by my experience, we conducted a very intensive project at JNU whose language is Urdu, and we started with Malay Kotla where 80% population is Muslim and 20% is Hindu. And all the Muslim populations, obviously we knew it speak Punjabi and they know Punjabi, why should they need Urdu? Anyway, our results showed that Urdu is a language of Muslim, is a construct by Hindus. So it is not, and all over we investigated the GALF Urdu in Lucknow as well as in Allahabad and other places in Punjab as well as in the south. And the conclusion was that Urdu was not a language of Muslim. In fact, within the UP area, where actually when the state reorganization took place, Urdu should have gone to UP. But unluckily, Urdu went to Kashmir, you see. And that was a very unfortunate situation because a large number of Urdu speakers resided in UP. And when we conducted our survey, we realized that most of the people thought Urdu is a very sophisticated language of the elites. How can a middle class or lower class person speak Urdu? So this is the reality, Anyway, so I thought I would make a comment because now we also published papers also on this. It says whose language is Urdu. Coming to what you had been discussing, as a linguist, what we realize that language evolves, what we call co-evolutionary approach. Language evolves within a culture. And there are, as Keerti said, there are many words which are culture imbibed, and you cannot separate, many words from the culture, and whether it's kinship term or whether it is rituals or something of the sort. Now you have command on 2 or 3 good languages, and your target language is very good. My question is that knowing that every language evolves in co-evolutionary approach, how difficult it is to negotiate to make one culture into similar to another culture so the reader of the target language also feels akin to that. I think it's a Herculean task because I as a linguist, when I translate, I fall short of many equivalent words or expressions, especially the language structures. Because language structures also emote a worldview, you see. But I never consider grammar just a set of rules. It is actually a set of rules instituted in a worldview of the speaker. So I just want to know how you do this. It's really difficult.
Yes, Dr. Avi, who I respect greatly because she was a professor at JNU when I was doing my MPhil. She didn't teach me, but she was there on the staff, and therefore I still look upon her as a teacher. Yes, I do have a lot of questions about this, and very often I find that I change the sentence structures. For example, in Marathi, an assertive statement would sound much more effective as a rhetorical question because it creates that kind of an impact. When the character is talking to herself, or at least in Marathi, there is a lot of internal monologue going on where the reflexive pronoun is used to refer to the self. Now that's another challenge because you can't write a whole paragraph using one said, one felt, one thought, but you have to give some kind of marker. So generally what I try to do is show that this is the character speaking to herself using one, and then I say she thought, or she, you do interpolate and you do make these kind of choices. And because translation is such a subjective activity, there are two things which you can never quantify. One is what is a good translation, but you can justify the choices that you have made. My choices may not agree with the next translator's choices. But if ultimately we have succeeded in showing, in making it clear to the reader what we are intending, or what the author rather is intending, because that's the first quality a translator requires, self-effacement. The translator should never be visible. If I say, it's my translation, no, it is Damodar Mauzo's translation, or it is a translation of Vishwas Patil, or it's the translation of Anant Murthy. It's not Keerti Ramachandra's translation. Yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
You wanted to ask.
Oh, it's actually good. In the question and the explanation that you gave, whatever I wanted to is actually covered. We have one more question.
I want to ask you a question. Is it possible that a translator sometimes becomes better than the original? It is possible?
No. And if somebody told me your translation is better than the original, I would be highly offended, because it is not my duty to improve upon the original. It is not my responsibility. It is the author's work. It shall always remain the author's work.
So that is the idea.
Sorry?
Ideally is the person who wrote the first.
Absolutely. I am only a medium, through which something is moving from one A to B. I am not affecting the, I don't know, there's a chemical term for it. Catalyst.
Can you call it second fiddle if you want?
No, but it can happen. The situation may come that the translation is better than original, and I think that happens only if the writing is, the original is in English. It has to be translated into Indian languages. And the context is Indian context, but the novel is or whatever is written in English. When you translate it into one of the Indian languages, because the context is India, somehow the original becomes better than English. And this is true of the Vikram Seth's book on A Suitable Boy. When the Hindi translation came, most of us felt that this is much better than the English version, you see.
Right. I agree with that, because you're describing an Indian experience, and what better language to express it than one of ours. You had another question. I think
So the translator need not be a second fiddle for the original.
the second
Fiddle.
Second fiddle. I don't think one plays the fiddle at all, because the very word fiddle means interfere also, to meddle around with it.
Yes.
I don't think so.
But it can be better than the original in many respects. It is possible, I believe, because both are human beings. He can understand better, express it in a more wonderful manner than the original. Sometimes it is possible.
I don't know, but I try not to. I try not to do that. I try to be as close to the original. I'm not saying faithful. I'm saying close to the original as possible.
Can you ask a question?
No, I think what Keerti has just said is quite right. See, when you are translating, and if you are a good translator, you cannot be better than the original.
Can we have one last question? I think we don't have time. No? Yeah, like I said before, the topic is so huge and the experience they've had is so enormous that it's really difficult to crunch it all down into this 45-minute session. And also there's this question of translating fiction and translating non-fiction, and there's history and the idea of faith in both of these. It's such a malleable term that it's very difficult to have an unequivocal kind of conclusion to this. But I think at the end of the day we can agree that in a multilingual and multicultural society like ours, where the ideal, when we started out as a country, the ideal of, in a positive way, the idea of nation is being thrown around in so many different contexts these days, but the ideal way would have been was supposed to be, at least what was intended was to celebrate pluralism, celebrate difference, so that in this multilingual, multicultural society we can thrive, and that would actually be the source of great cultural production. But somehow, I don't know, we've gone in the way, and I mean there is a lot of, we may deny it, but you just look up, you will see how much of the idea of nationalism now is about homogenizing things, and there's this great power being imposed in that sense. So I think translation is a very powerful tool that will resist it, and I think it should be, I hope from what we've heard, we'll be inspired to do more translation and good quality translation. With that.
Can I just say one word? Please, the last word. Okay. What I'd like to say is the topic of this discussion was multilingualism, the puzzle that is India. I'm so glad that it is a puzzle. It's a jigsaw puzzle of 1,000 pieces, and the pieces will always remain individual, and yet they will make a picture.